The foundation is, among many other things, very involved in education reform efforts, as many of you know, but we reached the conclusion some time ago that we needed to stay in much closer touch with teachers in order to be as effective as possible in our education reform efforts. So that led to the formation several years ago of the Boston Teacher Advisory Board to the Boston Foundation, created in January of 2012, which consists of teachers from the three principal systems, the public school system, the charter school network, and the parochial school system in the city. And this advisory board has been of inestimable value to the Boston Foundation in all sorts of ways. And but it's really only one way that we are really seeking to magnify the voice of teachers in the very active ferment of education reform that continues in Boston and in the Commonwealth. So we have been a steady funder of the Boston Teacher Residency Program, and there are several of our presenters here this evening who are graduates of that effort. The Boston Foundation was also one of a handful of foundations that succeeded in bringing Teach for America to Boston back in 2008. We really thought that that was a peculiar situation where the Boston area has more Teach for America alumni than any other metropolitan area in the country, but we didn't have the program. So we're glad we were able to remedy that with other allies. We're also very proud of the fact that the Boston Foundation helped to start Teach Plus. We provided their very first grant, and that organization, now a national organization, has grown up to be a very influential voice of teachers around the country. So tonight is the continuation of our effort to elevate and listen more carefully than ever to the voices of teachers, and I think we're going to be very entertained as well as instructed this evening. You're familiar with the research that shows what an impact a good teacher can have on a student. It really is staggering. There's one study that has shown that the impact of a good fourth grade teacher can actually turn into an increase of about $700,000 in lifetime earnings for a student. So we have every motivation to focus on the quality of teaching that is going on, particularly in our inner city locations, and to listen very, very carefully. Teachers should not be the objects of education reform. They should be the engineers of education reform. So that's very much the spirit in which we are so pleased to sponsor this program this evening. Now I'd like to bring up Elizabeth Pauley, our Senior Director of Education at the Boston Foundation, to tell us what is in store for the balance of the evening. Elizabeth?
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm so happy to welcome you here on what is one of my favorite events of the year, the third annual Boston Ed Talks. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I am a program director here, and I work in the education to career space. I started my career as a second and third grade teacher, and remember just how hard but yet how rewarding that job was. And I loved being a teacher, and I'm glad now to be able to work with teachers. And then in that spirit, I ask you to join me in wishing all of the teachers in the room a happy Teacher Appreciation Week with a round of applause. So as Paul said, we started the Teacher Advisory Board in 2012. We did so to build bridges between the foundation and the teachers who are doing the work in classrooms every day across the city. Through this initiative, we bring together teachers across the sectors in the city. We have teachers on the board from Catholic schools, from the district schools, and from charter schools. And we're grateful to have them together, talking to each other about the common challenges they face, but also the uniqueness of each sector that they represent. It gives us a way to understand how teachers see things, and I'll tell you that we spend time talking here at the foundation about a longer school day or structural reform and governance models. We think a lot about how to get more physical activity into schools and more arts in schools, and it's really helpful to test what we're seeing as a funder against the common sense and practical real-world experiences of teachers. So we've learned a tremendous amount from the teachers who are on our teacher advisory board and are grateful tonight to be able to showcase the work of teachers from around the city. So this is meant to be a forum of teachers sharing their ideas. These presentations, which you'll hear in just a minute and you'll hear more about from our next speakers, these were the ideas of the teachers and they're things that matter to them. So I look forward to seeing the presentations, and with that, I'm actually going to welcome up two of our teacher advisory board members who are going to serve as your MCs for the evening, who will explain how things will go and also introduce our first speaker. So our two teacher advisory board members who will be our MCs are Michelle Morrissey, who is an instructional coach in the history department in the Boston Public Schools, and Jeanne Roundtree, a science teacher at Madison Park Vocational High School. So welcome.
As teachers, Jeanne and I know that the Ed Talks represent an important and unusual opportunity for us to share our ideas and to hear from great teachers across the city. But as former presenters, we can tell you that what has really mattered to us about participating in the Ed Talks was not just getting the opportunity to talk, but the opportunity to engage in a dialogue with everyone who is here tonight.
The talks that we gave last year have had an impact that has lasted more than just one night. For example, last year I presented an idea here with my colleague Andrew Vega about the importance of male teachers of color, the importance they've had in our lives, and why we need to recruit and retain more of these teachers in Boston. Our talk, combined with the work of other teachers around issues of diversity, has resulted in a male educator of color executive coaching seminar that began for its first year, and other initiatives that are having real effect in Boston. We urge you to take seriously the ideas that these 7 outstanding presenters are about to share with you, and to engage in a dialogue with these teachers about the ideas that they present to you, and we challenge you to carry them forward.
And now, on to the main event. The 6 presentations you are about to hear were selected by members of the Teacher Advisory Board from more than 25 applications that were submitted from across the city. The teachers you're going to hear from teach at a range of schools, district charter and Catholic, and all grade levels from kindergarten through 12th grade. Our first presenters come to us from the Dever McCormack School in Dorchester. Neema Avashia, who was last year's Boston Teacher of the Year, teaches 8th grade civics, and she is the head of her social studies department. Her principal described her as passionate, entertaining, and a relentless advocate for her students. Chun Wang, the director of operations for the Dever McCormack, was described by a colleague as combining efficiency, vision, and a deep respect for the children we serve. I think you will see not only their seriousness, but their strong sense of purpose in their presentation. Please welcome Neema and Chun Ying.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Neema Avashia. I'm an 8th grade civics teacher at the Dever McCormack K-8 school.
My name is my mic on? Okay, sorry. My name is Chun Wang. I'm the director of operations at the school. We are incredibly excited to be here tonight and share with you our school's work on early warning indicators, or EWI for short.
We'd like to start today by telling you a little bit about our school. So the Dever McCormack started as 2 separate schools, the Dever Elementary and the McCormack Middle School. In 2010, they were brought under one leader, Principal Mike Sabin. We're here today to talk a little bit about the upper school. You'll hear from our colleague Brandon Lee a little bit later. He works in the lower school. But our upper school has 660 students. 90% of our students are on free or reduced lunch. 90% of our students are students of color. And 40% of our students are either English language learners or students with special needs. As a result, we teach a student population that has a wide variety of amazing strengths, but also some challenges, and we think that the framework we're talking about today is a really critical piece of figuring out how to support all students. I want to start by telling you a story about my student Elise. I've known Elise since she was in 6th grade. When she was in 6th grade, her sister was in my 8th grade class, and Elise, like a lot of little sisters, wanted to be just like her big sister. So she would spend a lot of time in the hallway, getting into trouble, getting into altercations with other students, trying to act much older than she was actually. And it caused her to suffer in a lot of ways. Her attendance was low, her grades were low, and she was racking up a lot of disciplinary referrals. And when I would watch her in the hallway, I would worry about her a lot, and I would worry about what her trajectory through our school was going to be like. But this year, I have the opportunity to teach Elise in my 8th grade civics class. And I've also had the opportunity to really spend a lot of time looking at her data. And I think her data tells a really interesting story about her experience at our school. So if you start by looking at Elise's attendance in 6th grade, her attendance was around 86.7%, which means she missed about 27 days of school as a 6th grader. That put her far below the average for her peers and put her in a situation where she was very far off track in terms of being able to be successful in middle school. But by 8th grade, her attendance has jumped by a full 10 percentage points. She's at 96.4%, and that means she's only missed about 5 days of school this year. The story is similar for disciplinary referrals. As a 6th grader, Elise earned 30 disciplinary referrals for major behavioral incidents. As an 8th grader this year, she's only got 6, so there's a significant drop there. And finally, in terms of her grade point average, the story is similar. When she was a 6th grader, she earned mainly D's and F's, and her GPA was around 1.33. As an 8th grader, she's earning C's or higher in all of her classes, and her GPA is around 2.18, a full grade point higher. So the question is, what happened to Elise? How did she go from being the 6th grader who was off track in terms of attendance, behavior, and coursework, to as an 8th grader being on track in all 3 categories?
Our hypothesis and what we're presenting tonight is that it's really been our school's work on EWI that's had this significant positive impact on Elise and on so many other students at our school. EWI stands for Early Warning Indicators of High School Dropout. And what it is a framework of analyzing and using student data to make sure kids are on the track towards high school graduation. It originally came out of research by Dr. Robert Balfans at Johns Hopkins. What he and his team set out to find was, what are the factors or what are the indicators about a student that most predict how likely that student is to drop out of or graduate from high school? And they found 2 really interesting findings. The first is that the 3 indicators we just saw of attendance, behavior, and course grades are the 3 most highly predictive indicators, and even more so, and sometimes surprisingly, than standardized test scores. And the second really interesting finding is that these 3 are really predictive in as early as 6th grade. What that means for us as a middle school is that we can actually have a really significant impact on our students well after they've left our school. But as interesting, as fascinating as this research is, it's actually really hard for a school to know what to do with it. Dr. Balfans, out of this research, created a program called Diplomas Now, and we've been lucky enough to have the support and really strong partnership of DN to make sure that we're implementing EWI well. And at this point, I feel like we really have a significant way of looking at how impactful it is and what it can really look like at a school.
So with the partnership at Diplomas Now, we've kind of become a school community where data drives everything that we do. And not just data in terms of test score data, but really thinking about students' attendance data, their data around behavior, the data around their course grades, as indicators that we can use to think about how to support students and how to know how they're doing. And so even before the school year starts, teachers, staff members, guidance counselors, administrators are looking at data. They're analyzing the previous year's data to really think about how are we supporting our students? How are we making sure that a student who struggled with attendance is getting some mentoring and some support around their attendance? How are we thinking about a student who maybe struggled very seriously with their English or math grades and getting an intervention around reading or math that might really build them up? We're also using snapshots of student data to think strategically about our classes. You don't want to end up with a homeroom where a vast majority of students really struggle with attendance, and then there's another homeroom where no one is struggling with attendance. So you're really thinking about how do you balance kids' needs across your classes. That's all before the year starts. Once the year starts, teaching teams meet weekly to talk about the students who they teach in the context of data. So we get updated data every week that tells us, in the past week, How many behavioral referrals have students gotten? What does their attendance look like? What's going on with their course grades from one week to the next? And we can really use that data to think about, okay, who's slipping? How do we intervene with them really quickly? Who's back on track? Who might have been struggling before? And really be constantly monitoring where students are in terms of their performance on these three categories. Our administrative team is also looking at this data. They look at grade level trends and try to think about our students with the highest needs and how we're building up the support around them. And then monthly during the year, students who are still not making progress are referred to our student support team for even more intensive support. And we also have an attendance task force that looks specifically at student attendance and how to move that particular indicator. In short, data and early warning indicators drive the work that we do at our school from day 1 all the way to day 180.
So that's a very macro level at the systems. Now we want to take you back to Elise, because that's who we really care about. If you think about all of the work that our adults are doing at the school, and what does it really look like from a student perspective? If you think about the interventions kind of surrounding a particular student, kind of like a little solar system, the interventions that are farthest away from her are tier 1 interventions. And they're far because they're really broad. We provide these interventions for every student at the school. And they include unified school culture of common expectations, common instructional techniques. They also include raffles and school-wide assemblies that recognize students who've made progress on EWI. And finally, at our school, they include quarterly progress reports and individual conferencing, where we organize data into a reader-friendly format for our students, and we give them the time and adult help to really make sense of that data and to set goals around it. So we'd like to talk a little bit more about these conferences in particular. This is an example of what each student gets at the mid-level of each quarter. You can tell the theme is the road to high school success. So their 3 indicators are marked by 3 highway signs, along with traffic lights, even though there aren't traffic lights on highways, but you can tell the idea is that we're giving them a very colorful, very engaging way of understanding their own data. And if we zoom in on one of these indicators, this is C for coursework, you can tell that we provide their updated grades. And we also tell, for this particular student, that they're in the red. They have at least 1 D or F at this point in the quarter. But we don't want to just leave it at that. We also provide text that tells them why they're getting the red and also what they can do about it. They still have a whole half of a quarter left to improve. These are some pictures that Neema took at the last quarterly progress report conferences. You can tell that our students are super excited to be talking about data at 7:30 in the morning. And you can tell that Elise is really excited to be talking about her own data. But this is really where the power and the action of EWI can be, is with students and with students owning their own data. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is closer to Elise because it's more specific to her needs. Based on her history of struggling attendance and academics, she now gets a phone call each time she's absent, just to make sure she's okay and make sure she comes back to school the next day. She also has a point person on her teaching team, her math teacher, who checks in regularly on her academic progress. And she's also been assigned to Neema's homework advisory class 2 days per week to make sure she has time to keep up with her 8th grade classwork. And finally, closest to Elise, the most intensive and the most specific for her, address her academic needs. This year, she's in a math intervention class 3 days per week, as well as a Just Words literacy intervention class 4 days per week. And this is the galaxy, and this is the solar system of interventions that we've set for Elise based on what we saw that she needed from her data. We are so incredibly proud of the progress she's made since 6th grade. But I think one of the most important things to remember is that Elise is also proud of herself. She knows exactly how far she's come. She knows the improvements that she's made. Elise, though, is just one student. And we're not saying EWI worked because it worked for Elise. So we're going to talk a little bit about this class of 2014, this 8th grade class that started with us when we started EWI, really. And that's only a few months away from high school, you know, the real deal. So when we look at her graduating class, overall attendance rate, much, much higher than previous graduating classes. Average number of disciplinary referrals, much, much lower. And finally, course failure rate, also lower. Although we tried to show by the slant of the arrow, we've seen less progress on this. And this shows to us, as always, we have improvements to make, and we have work to do still.
That said, we actually think there's a lot of power in this framework. So much power that we want to make sure we share it with you, because we think that this is a framework that can really help students across our city. But there's some really important takeaways that we want to make sure you get from this presentation. The first one is that effectively supporting students has to start with data. If you don't start with data, it's not strategic, you miss kids. And you miss kids who then end up struggling later because you didn't notice what they were struggling with when they were in middle school. So you have to start with data collection and analysis. But that doesn't mean that teachers have to be sitting in their classrooms banging their heads looking at Excel spreadsheets. That's not going to work. You need somebody who can take data and make it digestible for both adults and students. And you need somebody who has that skill set. We've been lucky because of our partnership with Diplomas Now, because of work that Chun has done, because of savvy people around Excel, way more savvy than I am. They can take the data and they can present it in ways that both I can understand as a teacher, but that also a middle school student, a sixth grader, we've even done this with fifth graders, can make meaning of. Connected to that, data has to be related to interventions. If people know that students are struggling, but we don't have ideas on what we can do next, that can be really paralyzing. It can paralyze teachers and it can paralyze kids. And so if we commit to the work around data, we also have to commit to the work around resourcing interventions. We have middle school students and high school students who are reading at a 3rd and 4th grade level. We can see that 100 times in data and know it and live with it, and it can hurt us. But until we really start to move on the interventions, we're not going to see change. And lastly, it's important to understand that this work is very specific. We could give you the list of interventions that we use at the McCormack, and you could go somewhere else and try them, and they might not work. The whole point of EWI is that it really brings supporting students down to the specific student and specific school level. And so this framework is a way for getting you and getting students to the place where the specialization that comes around support is very, very, very accurate. Our theory is that this method of thinking about student support could really support students in Boston and schools in Boston in helping all of our kids get to high school graduation and beyond. And so we hope you'll take this information with you and use it to support our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Neema and Chun, for a great presentation. Our next presenter is Christopher Mee, who is a teacher at another course to college. Chris is the most experienced of our teacher presenters today. He's had 18 years in the classroom, which is a true accomplishment. In Chris's words, a successful teacher is one who continually creates the conditions in the classroom for students to learn independently, because learning independently is the way of the lifelong learner. Please welcome Christopher Mee.
Thank you, Jeanne. Jeanne mentioned 18 years. I'm going for 40. "18 years, a lot of students, it's a lot of names, a lot of faces, but tonight I'd like to talk about the dreams. Each year, since I'm a 9th grade teacher, the students share with me their dreams, some of them on day one. Over the years, I've heard a lot about doctors, a lot about lawyers. In the last 10 years, with all the CSI shows, I've heard a lot about forensic psychologists. There's a part, though, to these conversations that has always saddened me. There's our Boston, and there's one of my 9th grade students. And I wonder how many years it will take for Singh, that's his name, and all 9th grade students to meaningfully experience any one of those professions. It is as if this is the 21st century dream deferred. 3 years ago, a program came to Boston intent on changing the dream deferred. Its name is BUILD. It is a 4-year entrepreneurship program. Great motto. Entrepreneurship is the hook, college is the goal. BUILD came to us with an incredible track record. 99% of the students who complete the 4-year program graduate from high school. 80% of those students go on to 4-year colleges and universities. Tonight, I'd like to talk about 3 essential elements of the program. The first, of course, is the entrepreneurship experience. When students come into my class that first day in September, I want them to begin to think of themselves as problem solvers, as creators. I want them to be curious. I want them to be disciplined. Now, I'm feeling pretty serious now, but I'm known in my school as being very, very corny. So one day, I said, what if curiosity and discipline got married? Students said, what? I said, think about it. This is in build class. I bet their kid would be feasibility, right? You would have an idea that you had thought about, and you had tested it. So one of the most gratifying things to me as a teacher is to see students take on the language of entrepreneurship, feasibility, and to know what it means. I must tell you, though, that this process is definitely not linear. And here's a story to illustrate that fact. My first year, I was with a business team. It was the first day. We're sitting around the table, ready to brainstorm, ready to take notes. No one has a pen. Not even me. But like good entrepreneurs, they took that problem and they turned it into a business opportunity. They were convinced they could create a pen that even a ninth grader could not lose. And so the process continued over the weeks, over the months. They started researching the competition. They started continuing with their designs. They started estimating their cost of goods sold, another great term. And they were finally ready to unveil their prototype. And here it is, the Dependable. The pen that you can clip to any part of your person, and it really is almost impossible to lose. Anybody interested? You would not believe how many of these I have in my car. The same team that could not record their first day of existence in the last 2 years has sold 600 of these units. Look at these winning smiles. The Dependable. The second part of Build is trying to develop students' real-world skills that they can use in entrepreneurship, they can use anywhere. Please meet Frandy. That's not Frandy. Okay, let's come back. Let's pretend that is Frandy, okay? Frandy was one of the most enthusiastic Build students I ever saw. Within the first day, he was telling me that he was going to be the chief executive officer of his team. So just imagine that exuberance. Now, 2 weeks later, that was Frandy. Frandy's winning smile did not come across the way to his teammates necessarily that it might to for us. Frandy needed a skill set to become a leader. He needed to find a way to manage conflict. If you ask ninth graders about conflict, they're very honest. Most of them will tell you that they have two pitches. One is to be passive, one is to be aggressive. What we teach in Build is that there's a third way, the way of being assertive, the way to step up to someone without stepping on someone. That is the way of the chief executive officer. Let's look at one more picture of Frandy. You can see it in his hand gestures. If we could broadcast this live, you would hear it in his voice. And you certainly can see it in the way the team is reacting to him. I think I've saved the best part of Build for last. These are the mentors. Across its 4 schools, Charlestown, Community Academy of Science and Health, the Jeremiah E. Burke, and another course to college, my school, Build has 90 mentors. These are all entrepreneurs, and they all have college degrees. And they all commit to at least 1.5 hours of working with their business teams. Now, anyone who's a teacher, you're going to get real jealous, so just brace yourself. Usually in the Build classroom, I'm 1 with 30. But on Wednesday afternoons, between 3 and 4:30, 12 business professionals come into the room. And suddenly 1 on 30 has become 2 on 5 every week. You can imagine, after the course of working together for an entire year, the thrill of winning that mentors and students share. But what I think about most are conversations like these. This is not a thrill conversation, as you can see. This is a hard one. And the thing about mentors that I like the most is their willingness to engage students when it is hard. And this is not just about their business plan. This could be about something going on at home. This could be about an academic issue. So 1 on 30 became 2 on 5, becomes 1 on 1 in 4 schools in the city. I asked you to think tonight at the beginning of the dream deferred. This is our Boston. This is my student Sing. I think it's our student Sing. What would he have to say? Well, let's see him pitch his product called the e-candle. Ready for all mothers for Mother's Day.
Hi, my name is Keenan Singh. My product is e-candle. E-candle is the only carbon-neutral, multi-scented, multi-layered candle on the market.
I would submit to you, this young man is not living a dream deferred. At 14, 15 years old, he's already starting to live a life of choice. And that, I believe, is entrepreneurship education. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Before we go on, we'd also like to welcome a couple of guests who've joined us. John McDonough, who's the interim superintendent here in Boston Public Schools. And George Perry, who is Mayor Walsh's education advisor. Our next presenter is Brandon Lee. Brandon is a graduate of the Boston Teacher Residency, and he teaches engineering and technology at the McCormack School in Dorchester. His principal describes him as a fresh thinker who is bringing new ideas into the classroom. I can tell you that after meeting Brandon, my new mission is to get my soon-to-be kindergartner into his class. Please welcome Brandon Lee.
Good evening. My presentation is entitled, From Bananas to Robots, A Look into the Elementary Engineering Classroom. So today I'm going to take you into my world, into my engineering class at the McCormack Lower. And by the end of this presentation, I will have you convinced that we need engineering in every elementary school in Boston. But first, we're going to take a look at this picture of this beautiful man. For those of you who do not know, that is Elon Musk. He is an engineer. He is most famous for having founded Tesla Motors, which has created electric cars that people actually want to buy. He has proposed the Hyperloop, which is a system where he would put people inside tubes, put those tubes inside a vacuum, and send people from San Francisco to LA in half an hour, all running on solar energy. And he's also developed SpaceX, which is a commercial company that builds rockets, space transportation, and they're reusable. So he's actually sending rockets up and landing them right now, which is insane. And so this is the world we live in right now. This is the present. It seems like the future, but this is the present. Here's what the future does look like. Kathy Davidson, professor at Duke University, says that by one estimate, 65% of children entering school this year will be working in careers that haven't been invented yet. This means our children will be working careers in science, technology, engineering, and we haven't pushed the realms that far yet. So if our present is so technologically complex, how do we prepare our students now for a future that we can't yet envision? Because our children today are going to be the next Elon Musks. Every great innovator, every great engineer, every great scientist, at some point was in kindergarten eating paste. So what do? Here's how we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this with our current model of teaching technology. If you Google image technology classroom, this is the first picture that shows up. This is an old picture. You can tell, but it's also an uncomfortably familiar picture. We see that students are sitting at their desk in front of their computer, one-on-one ratio, and this is important. They all have headphones on. This will make sure they never have to talk to each other. And we know in our heart of hearts this is not the right way to teach. We know this isn't sustainable. So this is my technology classroom Redux. This is my classroom. And here are some of my second graders. And they're working groups. They have computers, but they're not using them for the sake of using computers. They're using them as a tool. And actually, this particular day, we're building robots. So they're using the computers to do the programming. And they also have to do the hard build of the robot itself. And as a group, they need to figure out how to negotiate that. They need to figure out how to do all that together as a team. So there's a lot of forced collaboration there. The first day, I told them that engineers never work alone. And from then on, they have to just figure it out. And they do. And they love it. And it's engaging. So to get here, we need a paradigm shift. We need to stop thinking of our students as users of technology. So this is teaching them things like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, online research, typing programs. And these are all important things, but they're not the most important things. We want to go from seeing students as users of technology to creators of technology. This is things like computer programming, building an alarm system so your sister doesn't touch your stuff. Fifth grader did that. Or constructing a prototype for a tutu with an accelerometer that lights up when the user moves. And that was done by a colleague of mine in Berkeley, whose student actually was able to make that. So never underestimate the potential that children have. Some more examples. This is the classic engineering lesson, right? Bridge design. This is another one of my second grade classes. And one day when we got to suspension bridges, I just gave them some string and some cardboard and a block, and I said, build a bridge that would hold up this block that spans this length. And so by doing so, they ended up actually just building suspension bridges or building cable-stayed bridges. And then we were able to actually discuss those bridges, talk about things like compression and tension. We also graphed our data, and we were able to use that data to influence our further designs. So we were giving math an application for math. But that wasn't the best part of this unit. The best part was when a student says, but Mr. Lee, how long can we build a suspension bridge? Because I told him it was the strongest type of bridge. So I look at my lesson plan. I look back at the child. I take my lesson plan, I rip it up. Not actually, because there was no paper plan, but I threw it out. And then you just go with it, right? You just let the child lead, and you let them lead the learning, and you see where it ends up, and you just support them along the way. So much of engineering, so much of the power of engineering is giving children the agency to take control of their own learning. And at the end of this, they had this huge suspension bridge. That was a classroom rug of about 9 feet long, and that bridge suspended the entire distance. Here is another example. This is my fourth grade classes. For those of you who don't know, fourth graders in Boston need to learn about energy. That's the science content. Now, energy is a very abstract concept. As a somewhat full-grown adult, I kind of have an understanding of energy. Well, we expect our children to understand it. So to help them understand it, we did a roller coaster design unit with marbles and pipe insulation and whatever the other scraps I have lying around. And so here's Link on the left, and she drops a marble down this pipe insulation, and she realizes it doesn't go very fast. So she steps up on a chair, and now she's taller, she has more potential energy, so she drops it, it goes even faster. But then she realized she's not nearly as tall as her friend Joyce, who's very tall. Joyce is incredibly tall for her age. And so Joy steps up on this chair, and she drops the marble, and it goes even faster. And then Joy carefully looks around, and then she steps up on the table, and drops it, it goes even faster. And then at this point, I look over, and I see Joyce. I make eye contact with her. She steps down. So I walk over to her. I say, Joyce, what are you doing? And she says, sorry, Mr. Lee. And I say, you had so much more potential energy when you were up there. Get back on the table. It was going so much faster. That potential energy converted to kinetic energy, and your marble went faster. And I said, do not ever tell a teacher that let you stand on the table. But now we're giving students an application for the science content that they're learning, and they're building, and they're much more involved with it. And I can tell them, if you ever become a roller coaster engineer, you need to know this stuff. So second grade to fourth grade, preschoolers, K1, 4-year-olds, can also do engineering too. And in some ways, they're the best engineers because they're not inhibited by anything. So this was a K1 unit. We were building igloos out of milk jugs solicited from our friends and family, and also Garlic Farms. And so we built this amazing igloo, and now they nap inside of it. But at the same time, all-star K1 teacher Jen Langdon was doing reading around polar bears, around the Inuit, around the Arctic. So we're able to tie in engineering and literacy. And this is kind of how it should really look. Engineering should be integrated with all the other content, and that's what's going to be the most powerful. But this isn't the most important reason why we teach engineering. Math and science applications and literacy, these are all important. But the most important reason that we teach engineering is because it's awesome. So I'm going to show you this video of my 5th grader, Yosmar, and he constructed a video game on Scratch. So he did all the programming. Okay, sorry. And he built this maze, and then instead of keyboard controls, he made banana controls.
What happens if I connect it to my hair or something? Does it work? No, it doesn't work.
You can see his characters here.
I thought it would still work. I think it would hurt. Oh no, it doesn't work. Yes! Yes! It doesn't fit! Does it hurt? Oh, it's loud.
And I don't know what standard that matches up with, but it's amazing, and I don't care. Wow, we don't like Common Core standards. So I was really going to come up here and make the spiel about how we need this in every school in Boston, but not really thinking we may have this holistic change. All schools in Boston at once, engineering, not really happening in my mind. But then I went to the National Science Teachers Association conference that was in Boston this year. I met a man named Chad Ratliff, who is the district administrator of the Albemarle County Public School System. So think greater Charlottesville, Virginia area, combination of urban, suburban, and rural communities all in one. And their school system was having some struggles, so his plan was to get engineering K through 12. So that means in every school, elementary, middle, high school, there are 3D printers in the cafeterias and libraries, hand saws, sewing machines, every material from fabric to metals to wood to plastics, and students are building and constructing all the time. But this started with summer schools, with the students have the most tumultuous relationship with school, and they did summer schools one year where everyone did cardboard engineering with cardboard. And halfway through summer school, they noticed something really interesting. There were students in summer school who weren't supposed to be there. There were children who decided to come to summer school because it was so amazing. And isn't this all we want as educators, as teachers? We just want students to love learning so much that they just want to drown in it. Why would we withhold that? So I have a plan. Here's the game plan. Step 1, an engineering class in every elementary school. Step 2, change the world. We have like a 100-year jump on the next public school system. If we truly claim to be innovators in education, then we need to start providing engineering to all students. This can no longer be content that only students of privilege get access to if they can go to summer camps and do this in their off time as an extracurricular. This is something every child needs, every child deserves. And until we do that, we're not doing justice by our kids. Imagine if any time you walked into an elementary school, you would see students building, engineering, constructing. Imagine if every child saw herself as an engineer. How powerful would that be? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for a great presentation. I just actually had a question for you. Do you think you could do you take adults in your classes? I think if I crouch real low, I might be able to blend in. Yeah. So our next presenter is Darren Benedict from Excel Middle School. His assistant principal says about Darren that she'd like to highlight his ability to push students to find the joy and the rigor of learning. Beyond delivering excellent instruction that challenges our students, Darren consistently strives to ground his classes and his approach to his work at large in the lives of our students. And on a personal note, Darren is also a former professional wrestler, which makes him a hero of mine. Please welcome Darren Benedict.
is recommended that kids and teens engage in 60 minutes of physical activity every day. Given that school is such a large part of our students' lives, we play a large role in giving them that 60 minutes of physical activity. Despite the fact that this recommendation is very well known, even in this room, it doesn't account for the fact that in order to make this happen, it requires scheduling changes, it requires space, it requires materials. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating that we don't seek to make these changes. But today I'm going to present you with a solution that you can implement today that takes just 60 seconds with zero disruption. Good evening. My name is Darren Benedict. I'm a health and fitness teacher at Excel Academy Charter School in East Boston. As you may be able to hear from my accent, I am not from New England. Instead, I come from Old England. I grew up just outside of London. I earned my undergraduate degree from Buckinghamshire and Chilterns University College in sports psychology. I went on to earn my master's in sport and exercise psychology from Loughborough University, and then went to teach at South Nottingham College, where I instructed sports leadership and sports psychology courses. For the past 2 years, I've been working at Excel Academy Middle School. Before I go on, I would like to share with you this image. What you can see are composite brain scans taken from 20 students prior to taking the same test. Our first brain scan was of the 10 students that sat quietly, reflecting. Our second brain scan, the one on your right, is of 10 students who went for a 20-minute walk prior to taking the same test. The difference between the two is startling. As you can see, the brain on the right is far more engaged. The red, the yellow, the green highlighted areas are of the student's mind being engaged, the electrical activity. This tells us that students are able to retain information. It tells us that students are able to focus more easily. A huge, huge thing when taking a test. As I'm in a room with so many amazing educators and business leaders, I think it's clear why I'm sharing you with this image. But I think I can get your students and your workers from the first brain across to the second brain in just 60 seconds. The program that I'm going to present to you today is called the Bring It Minute. 60 seconds to change your life. It's currently being used at all 3 Excel Academy middle schools, Brook Mattapan in Boston, and Coney Island Prep in New York. The concept of the Bring It Minute is simple. Every second counts. At Excel, as I'm sure all of you do, at your schools and businesses, we strive to make every instructional moment an instructional moment. And whilst there is no such thing as downtime, if we were to do a composite brain scan of your students, or of you right now, we might find that your brains look more like the blue brain, the first brain, than the second red, yellow, and green active, engaged brain. And I think I can take you across. The Bring It Minute is a single laminated sheet. It lives at the front of your classroom in a place that's accessible and that's visible. It's a series of exercises, not just one, that incorporates full body movement. Any teacher, regardless of their own personal fitness levels, regardless of their own personal ability to instruct, is able to lead the Bring It Minute. They just need to read what is written on the sheet. The Bring It Minute can be used at any time, in any space, in any location. And at Excel, I have 7 different Bring It Minutes. And that makes the routines feel very varied. It makes the kids think that the routine is new, even though they did it 5 or 6 weeks ago. The impact of the Bring It Minute is instantaneous. For me, the most powerful thing is that when an adult leads students in physical activity, when they lead students in a Bring It Minute, they are able to associate adult role models with physical activity. And in a world where we are fighting cell phones and video games, that is huge. An 8th grade English teacher said, "I've noticed a distinctly different attitude and vibe in class after a Bring It Minute. Kids are more positive and they're happy to be doing their work. An 8th grade student said, I love the Bring It Minute. It gives me energy. She also notified me that it was actually quite funny to see her other classmates doing it at the same time. But that's by the by. And a 6th grade math teacher commented on the fact that the Bring It Minute doesn't just add movement to the school day, but it also has joy. And finally, my English language learning specialist told me that the Bring It Minute gets her students to focus almost immediately. So what does the Bring It Minute look like? As you can see, the Bring It Minute is relatively low tech. I've themed Bring It Minutes with shapes. The one you see on there is shaped like a circle. The top of the sheet gives the teacher the instructions to set up the Bring It Minute. It will tell the students to stand up and tuck in their chairs, or believe it or not, stay in their seats and be physically active. That's a really cool thing to do in a classroom. Then there's the read-along instructions. You read them along, the students follow on, and hey, presto, you have a whole bunch of students doing a physical activity routine in 60 seconds. But of course, I am a physical fitness instructor. It would be bizarre of me to stand up here, read off of these sheets, and tell you about the benefits of physical activity, how great a Bring It Minute is, and not get you up to experience it for yourself. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to rise in just a moment. You can prepare yourselves. A small caveat, if you feel unable to do any of these moves for whatever reason, feel free to modify them in any way you feel free. If you're moving, it's good enough for me. I will now ask you please to stand up. I'm going to be doing 3 moves with you. If you can't hear my voice, if you can't see me, just hear my voice. All right, we are going to take our right elbow and we are going to bring our right elbow to our left knee. Then we're going to take our left elbow and bring it to our right knee. This is a move I call core crossovers, and we're going to do 15 of them. It looks just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Raise your hand if you're breaking a sweat. All right, we have 2 more. Don't go anywhere. The next one I call pec flies. Your pec muscles are in your chest, and we are going to put our arms out like this. We're going to have our thumbs pointing towards our head. And can we bring our hands and our elbows together 10 times slowly? 1. I'm going to bust out of this shirt. 2. I feel like the Incredible Hulk. 3. 4. 5. We're halfway there. 6. 7, who's getting their elbows touching? 8, I can't do it. 9 and 10. And the last one we're going to do, this is going to burn a little bit. We're going to do something called calf raises. We're going to do 10 of them very slow, 15 of them very fast. So you're literally going up onto your tippy toes, something that all kids know how to do. You can keep your hands by your sides. You can put them up in the air if you really want to challenge yourself. If you're going to fall onto the person in front of you, just give them a heads up. Are we ready? Here we go. And 1 and down. 2 and down. 3 and down. I'm going to challenge myself. 4 and down. 5 and down. 6 and down. 7 and down. We're doing great. 8 and down. Bringing math as well. 9 and down. And 10. Now 15 fast. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Very good. I saw someone even raising the roof as they were doing it. You can take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I really hope you enjoyed that small burst of physical activity. I hope that you can already feel your brain being more engaged, ready to go. And you're probably asking, oh, Darren, that was awesome. I mean, I hope you're thinking that. Where can I get this program? And more importantly, how much is it going to cost, right? Because that's what you're really wondering. And the answer is nothing. It's absolutely free. All you need to do is visit this blog. There you go. bringitminute.blogspot.com. It's in your program, so you can take that with you. When you go on there, please sign up. The page looks like this. You put your name, your email, and a message just saying, hey, saw you at the Ed Talks, think you're really cool, would love the Bring It Minutes at my school or my organization. Very, very simple. I'll send them to you, and they're all yours. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Bring It Minute. My name is Darren Benedict. Thank you very much.
That is going to be tough to follow. Our next presenter is Keenan Flowers. Keenan teaches music at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Mission Grammar School. He has the special distinction of being the first person who was nominated to do an Ed Talk this year by one of his colleagues, and he was nominated not only one time, but 3 times by 3 different people across the city. And I think that you will see that his passion for his subject shines through. Please welcome Keenan Flowers.
Well, first off, I just want to thank Darren for allowing me to get my brain flowing at this time. But first of all, again, as she stated, my name is Keenan Flowers, and I just want to personally thank all of the educators in here, and just want all of you guys just to really appreciate all the educators that you had in your past, and I personally want to wish you a happy Appreciation Week. So can all educators, once again, you give yourselves a nice big hand? And as she stated, my name is Keenan Flowers, and I'm the music teacher at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Mission Grammar School, located literally in the heart of Mission Hill and Roxbury. I'm a self-taught, accomplished musician on 5 different instruments, and they're as follows: the piano, the guitar, the saxophone, and the violin. I am also a composer and arranger. I also compose original music, which my students also perform. One glance at my life, and well, it'll be obvious that I'm literally surrounded 24/7 by music, which you will find out in a quick minute. Also, I brought along an old friend that some of us may be familiar with, and others, well, it's time for an introduction. This friend tonight that I brought with me is world-renowned, homemade at times, is known for its squeaks, and sometimes it makes you just want to say, you know what, I quit. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce or reintroduce to you my friend, the recorder. So I hope everybody's in a good mood for some nice classic music. And since this is live, I plead no copyright infringement. Okay. Well, you get the point. All right. Did I also mention that I'm not really accomplished on the recorder, too? Yeah, that would be number 6 on the list, but anyway. So by now, I'm sure most of you can remember that the recorder was also a big part of our major music classes when we were growing up, for most of us. And also, we were introduced to many other things, such as the choral classes, and if we were really lucky, one of my personal favorites, band class, which also was included symphonic, marching band, concert band, or if you were literally in the marching band, see you at the basketball game, and pep band. I can also recall many of you as well that some of the requirements that were set before us was something just as simple like clapping rhythms, maybe singing something like solfege, like do, re, mi, fa. Okay, got you right there. So you thought I was going to sing, not quite. And also, of course, playing our good old friend, the recorder. Doing all of this, of course, most of us would consider to be an easy A in most of our music classes. This is, of course, in no way an insult that I'm delivering to some of us who's taught music or currently is teaching under the traditional umbrella in music nowadays in class. In fact, you're looking at a product of traditional music as we speak. And of course, I am also sure that as I look out among most of you, that you're a product of that same education as well. While these traditional components are intensely important, I knew that there needed to be a bridge, thank you, Brandon, that needed to be constructed, connecting the traditional components to the modern techniques with music education. And of course, I'm sure we remember these again. All right, thought I had to do a dance. Oh, take it back. So today's music class has evolved into many outlets, where its primary standards include innovation and creativity. And why don't I present to you a little demonstration of what a finished product looks like in one of my music classes. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you the dynamic vocal group, soon to be on the Grammy Awards, Official.
Yo, what it do, shawty? This be that group official, and you already know that. Step sang. This is official. MGS, and you know that we the best. We are officially coming to you lyrically, rapping for the ladies. They call me Is. Oh snap. Tighter than a fitted cap, snap back, making history. Look at me, how you like that? Stephanie spitting like Destiny, but I'm a singer. Single lady vacancy on my ring finger. Checking out my role, it's about that time. Official book the scene, graduated on prime. Get easy, cooler in the breezy. I'm a diva with the secret, my bling got freezy. Feel me?
Guess who's back, man? Morgan and Pac-Man. So cool, I'm frozen. Roman, you know this.
I can do harmony, I can do melody. The next big thing, the people call me Jack.
It's the capital D. Derek, you know me. Fitness and Templeton 3. J-R-A-D-E.
It's Jeanne, and I'm killing all those haters. Making rhymes with my crew. You know how we do, it's nothing new. Shot-town, I get down. No joke, no clown. Superior vocalist. Held it down since I was 6.
Leah, the girls wanna be ya, except for Jalea. #1 singer.
Little T, youngest of them all. I be shooting hoops like LeBron.
Got attitude, you know who I do, the youngest in the crew.
Official is the crew, you know how we do. It's officially over, time for all we through. Official now, 2012, 2013.
Oh, but there's a little more. Thank you. Just a little bit of a little marketing technique we embedded into this. But of course, this is all past.
May all your Christmases be white.
Thank you. Now, unfortunately, that album isn't available after this presentation, so you cannot find it in my car nor on iTunes as of yet. But again, what you just saw right there is just an example of what my students learn and also what they themselves create. And of course, I know by now you're wondering, how in the world can you do all of this just because, you know, you came up under the tradition of the recorder? You know, you sing a little bit of solfege here and there, but I'll tell you one thing, little do most of us fail to realize, most of the kids that we teach, they know about all of these things already. And so all they need to do is just have the chance and the opportunity to prove it, and also, as you just saw, to show it. So with these in mind, I've embedded the use of technology within my classroom. I've included the use of GarageBand, which is a multimedia-based software which enables students to not only construct and compose original music, but also display video quality, as you just saw, as the artists they themselves do in the media. Additionally, they are taught the techniques of lyric and vocal composition and vocal arrangement. Also, instrumental practices and performances using both physical and digital instrumentation. Digital instrumentation. I think I'll talk about that a little bit later on down the line because that doesn't sound like it exists, but it does because we are now in the technology age. Raise your hand if you now are carrying a cell phone. Believe it or not, your phone can also be an instrument. Anybody ever heard of the numbers? You know, when you dial them out, you know, there's a little tone, do, 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 do. Yes, that's actually sounds of music that you can create with only dialing numbers. But also, I also plan to produce and compose original and covered compositions which the students themselves perform. And of course, in many cases, the students choose and perform and create their own sets within the shows themselves. For example, I remember just last year for our spring concert, where our concert was themed after the concerts night at the movies. Now, what that means is that the students had an opportunity to go ahead and choose a movie of their choice and portray it in musical form. And I can actually see one of the teachers in the building right now, so I won't point you out, don't worry. But in this particular class, K1, they decided to choose the movie Toy Story. Now, I'm sure most of us, we're not that old, we remember the movie Toy Story. But they chose that particular movie to portray certain characters, or toys, if you will, and decided to give their name the toy box and perform the also classic and friendly, "You Got a Friend in Me." And I'll stop right there again. Now, this year, I plan to produce another round of that same theme. This time, it'll be Concert Night at the Movies, the sequel. Not available in theaters, though. Other organizations I found to be very helpful and innovative, and also what I'm responsible for, would be a step team, an urban dance team, and also the vocal group official, which you just witnessed. Now, in many cases, you can probably say that, well, my students, they're artists, and you can call me Mr. Grammy Association, both honoring and critiquing their work. Now, again, I want to go ahead and introduce someone to you all who you probably may be familiar with or maybe not be familiar with right now at this point. But this image that you see right now is a picture of myself. You see, one thing that many people may not know about me is that I was a very, very low-key individual, almost to the point where I did not exist. I never opened my mouth. I never said a word to anyone, nor did I even find it necessary to even speak a word, because I was afraid of the voice that I had. All the while I was growing up, I noticed that, I started to capture the image of music without necessarily reiterating or portraying it. But it was until one year when I was in 4th grade where I met my music teacher at the time, Ms. Bryant. Excuse me, getting a little emotional, because this is actually a personal story, something that I think as educators we can all use ourselves as demonstrators to our students to say, hey, we're real people. And so I actually tell the story to my students to let them know, Mr. Flowers, he's been there. But Ms. Bryant echoed these words to me because, again, I was considered a mute. Keenan, if you do not open your mouth and you choose to live in the shadow of nowhere, no one will know you exist or have a voice. But it was that moment that the seed was planted. And then I went on to become someone who not only performed in musical events, yes, that's me, I was cool, but I also ran track. I participated in also sport-like activities such as basketball, Little League football, and soccer. And right then and there, that's when I realized that life began to make more sense, because my teacher decided to innovatively place something inside of me that I never knew existed. And now what you see standing before you is a young man who's not only a music teacher, who also inspires others, but I also am an owner of my own record label. But not only am I an owner of a record label, I am the primary engineer, the writer and arranger, and also an artist. Now, one thing that I noticed that will always stick with me is those words that Ms. Bryant echoed to me. Now I have a voice, and now I'm using that voice to speak to you all this evening. And then, Ms. Bryant, if you're watching this, wherever you may be, I want to thank you, because what you see tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of a teacher who not only decided to take the extra mile to speak to someone who didn't exist, but to birth something that was already alive in me. And I'm challenging every one of you to be just as innovative and bold as not only myself, as I'm trying to be, as if anything, but to be determined and willing to make a product of someone who's not afraid to be themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Keenan. We'll be on the lookout for official. Our final presenter for the evening tonight is Emma Liliadahl Allen, who is a 7th grade math teacher at Match Charter Public Middle School. This is her 3rd year as a teacher, and here are some glowing words about Emma from her principal. Emma is the head of her department, a member of the instructional leadership team, and is always actively engaged in every meeting that we have, which I'm sure is a lot of meetings. Please welcome Emma.
Thank you. This is my classroom earlier this year, and I take great pride in looking at this picture because I know how hard it was for me to get a class that looked like this. 3 years ago when I started teaching, it was kind of a disaster. I remember quietly crying in the front of my room after the projector had been unplugged for the 3rd time in a class. And students muttered under their breath during my class, "I hate her." And in those moments, I felt uniquely and distinctly alone. But I wasn't. And in fact, I had a principal who was in my room for an hour each week, giving me feedback, coaching me. We made plans about students. We made plans about groups of students. We made plans about entire classes. But I couldn't quite get it right. And it wasn't until she said, "Your classroom needs to look like Dan's," that I understood what she meant. Dan was a veteran teacher. He'd been teaching for 11 years, and he was in my grade level. He taught 15 feet down the hall, and I hadn't been to his class. I was so busy, so isolated in my own failure that I wasn't able to step outside of my own classroom and to get into someone else's. So I walked down the hallway and I went to Dan's class. And what I saw was students standing on either side of the classroom. And they were having a debate over whether or not a democracy or a dictatorship was the best way to run a society. Now, I had an obvious answer to that question, but that's beside the point. And what I noticed is that the students were prepared. They were articulate. They were engaged. And they were my students. My students who I couldn't get to sit silently and take notes. And I realized that Dan had something that I needed to have. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the value of peer observation as an opportunity for professional development for novice teachers. But not only that, it's also a pathway to leadership for our most veteran and expert teachers to have the opportunity to stay in the classroom and impact change on their schools. So what's the challenge that we're faced with right now? I want to place us a little bit. Richard Ingersoll does a lot of research regarding teacher retention and new teachers, and he's done a lot of studies, and one of them suggests that by 2007 and 2008, that's the most recent data that was available, that the largest group of teachers had exactly 1 year of experience. That's in contrast with in 1978, when the largest single group of teachers had 15 years of experience. So what we know right now is the market of education is saturated with novice teachers, and that they need support, because my experience is not unique. Time and time again, we hear the tribulations of teachers in their first years, that they thought they were ready, and they just weren't. And what happens when teachers aren't ready to teach is that they leave. We know that 1/3 of teachers who enter the profession right now will not be teaching in 3 years. In 5 years, that number is 50%. But teachers don't just leave because they're not achieving in the classroom, because of experiences like mine. We also know that teachers are leaving because they're excellent leaders, and they have the opportunity to impart greater change outside of the classroom. This is Jill Pache, and she was the 6th grade teacher, math teacher at Match Middle School. She was an excellent teacher. Kids were engaged in her class. They learned from her, and they loved math. But Jill isn't teaching math anymore at our school. because she sought leadership that wasn't available within the classroom. And she wanted to have a bigger impact, and she didn't think she could do that in the school. The great thing is that we still have Jill working at Match Middle School. She's working in an administrative position, and she's having a great impact on kids. But I still find it sad that 6th graders right now don't get to take her class. This is also a problem that we can't afford not to fix. Nationally, we spend $7 billion on teacher recruitment and retention strategies. That's money that could be going towards build, so that more students could get entrepreneurial education, or could be going to build an engineering program in every single classroom across the country, not just in Boston. And we need to think of a way to figure out how to use that money better. So where do we want to be? Those are the challenges. Where do we want to be? Obviously, we want to be in a place where teachers are prepared and students learn. We want to move the needle on the achievement gap so that all students have access to the education that they deserve, not only in Boston, but across the country. We want to be in a place where teachers are growing within their classrooms, and they continue to grow and develop as they build their craft. One study by Jane Hanaway suggests that teachers' growth stops after 4 years in the classroom and just plateaus. We obviously, as teachers and administrators in this room, know that that is not true. So how could the studies say that? We need to make sure that teachers are continuing to grow in their classrooms. And finally, and I think most importantly, we need the opportunity for teacher leadership from within the classroom. Jillian Pache shouldn't have had to leave teaching in order to feel that she could impact change on a school level. My principal, Megan Reed, said, "Emma, I want to make sure you can stay in the classroom longer than I was able to," because she also left the classroom early so that she could have a bigger change and impact on students. And that's sad, because the touch that a teacher has with children is undeniable. So what's the vision? What's the solution? I don't know. But I do know that I have part of the solution. I by no means am saying right now that this vision is the end-all, be-all of professional development and we're going to fix all of these problems. But what I am saying is that it was effective for me. And when I talk to novice teachers, they get excited about the idea. And when I talk to veteran teachers, they get excited about the idea. So I think we've got something going. So let's talk a little bit about what it looks like. The good thing about it is that it's simple. You walk into someone's classroom, an expert teacher, a veteran teacher, an experienced and effective teacher, and you learn something new. The awesome thing about teaching is that teachers do 1,000,000 different things in a 60-minute period to engage their classes. So I needed to look in Dan's class for specifically how to manage my students. That was my struggle. So I went in with the lens of how do I manage this classroom? That could easily be replaced with how do you use engineering in a classroom? How do you use technology in a classroom? How do you use engagement strategies in a classroom? How do you use group work? How do you use individual work? How do you use assessment? How do you use project-based learning? There are 1,000,000 different things that veteran teachers bring to the classroom that all novice teachers can learn from. And not even just novices. As a third-year teacher, I know that I still have so much more to gain from observing and engaging in looking at what excellent teaching looks like. If I left you with a few things, it would be these. We have some golden rules, and what would a teacher be without a little rules? The first thing is to make observation purposeful. I walked into Dan's class because I knew that I had a management problem, and he didn't. So I knew that I had something to gain from that. Again, that can easily be replaced by 1,000 different things that veteran and effective teachers do. but there has to be a purpose to observation. Because when you do walk into a classroom of a veteran teacher, you literally are bombarded by all the amazing things that they do, and it can be overwhelming. Focus observation is key. And the second thing is make the time. And I don't mean on your lunch break, scarf a sandwich and watch a class. I mean really make the time for teachers to observe each other and to provide one another feedback. Honestly, I'm not sure that I would be teaching today if it hadn't been for the support of Dan and my school. I definitely would not be on this stage. And so for all of the teachers who are struggling and floundering in their first years of teaching, and for all of the teachers who excel and leave the classroom early because they don't have the leadership ladder that they deserve, we need to open the classroom door, and we need to keep teachers teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. And as an instructional coach now, and as someone who barely survived my first year of teaching, I think this is just such a powerful idea that you've presented us.